Yarngoda Pelge Drolora Zambe Zeparache Pande Alame Shabla Solvade Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Omo A Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Tön yerme çıktı çingi lo ma köke kudan da gelo ma köke sundan da gina ma köke tukdan da geyi tön yerme çıktı çingi lo Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Oha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonam Lai Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Pinchra Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Jancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drula Pinchira Sangye Druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo Alhai Ke Da Ludan Jin Ke Drubun Da Da Mi Ke Nam Dan Druba Kunge Dranam Chit Sampa Tam Che Ke Do Dagi Cheten To Tam Che Ke Do Dagi Cheten.
Yesterday, we put emphasis on the question, what do we want? Why to meditate? Remembering ourselves that meditation, more than being a state, is a process of familiarization. Recognizing so that suffering arises from the so-called mental defilements of how we live the world and not from the world that we live. And if we want to familiarize with our qualities and to develop patience, compassion, love, and so on, we need to familiarize our mind with that, with those things. So first of all, in order to do that, we need to have our mind present with the things that we want to familiarize ourselves with. And up to here, I believe that it's quite clear. Then we have seen that before actually starting to meditate, there are some necessary preliminaries, some preparation that is required. And after this part is finished, then I still have like a sort of question. Really, what do we want? Because if we are in a certain moment of our life where what we need the most is to find a sort of emotional balance, to face our anxiety, and to manage to be quite well inside of the life that we live, which is completely fine. And we want to rely on an internal resource. The techniques of preparation to meditation, like the one of the breathing and so on, are very good for that. And a lot can be done with that. And these techniques, of course, it's not a matter of doing 2 minutes. It's a matter of repeating more times and then bit by bit managing to be for longer periods of time. I know doctors that in their prescriptions for patients they write 4, 7, 8. Because some studies showed that the kind of breathing in with 4, holding with 7, and breathing out with 8, done for 50 minutes, helps to decrease panic attack, anxiety, and these kind of things. And in the same way that 4, 7, 8 works, also 4, 8, 8, 4, and so on. But okay, up to here is completely fine. But sometimes I'm left with the feeling that we take some tools that have been taught for centuries with a more elevated scope purpose, so to speak, and we want to use it for something that is more momentary. And somehow we take away from that tool its richness and its more profound aspects. And this is something that sometimes the Western world has done with meditation. So we take meditation, we study meditation, which is completely fine, wonderful, I'm also happy that it's done. And then you try somehow to take meditation away from the spiritual field somehow into a more profound level, and to use it like a sort of tool for the well-being of mind. What happened in the Western world with yoga, for example. According to me, then maybe I'm wrong, but a person that has followed a certain formation and yoga discipline that is profound and lives yoga as a lifestyle by all means, and sees maybe not all but many of the yoga centers and so on, then I believe that one doesn't really rejoice, but one maybe is left a bit like...
Come per dire, ok, prendiamo una parte.
So it's like taking a part and all the rest, where is it?
Perciò,
and so when we get into the meditation, what we have seen up to now is part mostly of the preparation to meditation. Inside of the preparation, in order to do it in a correct way, as a part of a spiritual path, actually we should put here what are called the 6 dharmas of preparation. Now I don't want to get into too many details. Then further on in time we're also doing the teachings of Lamrim, of the gradual path, and inside of the Lamrim we're still at the beginning, but there will be a moment further on that there is also about meditation. There I want to get into the minimum details. We will need weeks, but we'll do that. Here now, without getting into too many details, once that I have learned the technique a bit, then I need to reinforce the preliminaries. And inside of this, there is the part of preparing the place that we have talked about, preparing the posture, the body with the breathing. And then after this, there is the preparation of mind. Preparing the mind is about reconnecting with the why I am here, that I want to meditate. Why am I doing it? And at the basis of this, we should develop 2 feelings that are love towards myself and towards the others. So, some of you were present when there were the teachings on the self-healing practice. We talked about this at length. There is the first part, there is the take of refuge, after the generation of bodhicitta, and after that the generation of bodhicitta, which has exactly this function. So, I am sitting, I've finished breathing, and to bring my mind to the present, to a state that is more balanced. At that point I visualize in front of me the embodiment of the state of the so-called enlightenment. I visualize the so-called Guru Buddha, and I do the take of refuge. So I observe myself, I reflect on the fact that of the why of my suffering, I try to observe and see my own cycle of mental defilements, attachment, desire, dissatisfaction, anger, hatred, rancor. I act through on this based on selfishness, and I end up reacting, and then I react to suffering, and then I look at this and I say, I can't take it anymore. In general, the part of the meditation is explained after having talked about samsara, after having generated the part of the bodhicitta as a tool to get out of this. So, this moment I am there, I'm sitting, I do the take of refuge, I recognize that the only real way to develop my qualities is by familiarizing myself with them, and I need help, and so I take refuge. Then after that I visualize the other beings around me. I see that there is no difference among us, because we all suffer, we all want to be happy. And here I do an exercise and about which we can spend hours talking about it, but it's the process of first generating empathy, where I allow myself to see myself in the other, how much we are equal, and at the same time how we all want to be happy, not suffer, and that we're all driven by selfishness and so on. But so at the basis we are very similar, then we are different in many aspects, but and so we generate empathy. From empathy we generate sympathy. From sympathy we generate love, the attraction for the happiness of the other. From love we generate compassion, since I want you to be happy and not suffer. From compassion we generate altruism. Your happiness is as important for me as mine. Your suffering is as important for me as mine. I will do everything that I can so that you can be happy and not suffer. Once that we are able, even if just momentarily, into a state of altruism, one comes back to oneself, and then there is a brief moment of sense of impotency. I want to help all beings, but I can't even help the person that is next to me. So what do? I absolutely want to develop my qualities to their maximum potential, because I cannot help someone to face anger if me myself I get angry with every little thing. I cannot help you to have a coherent view of reality if I don't have that coherent view. So I want to develop my qualities to then be able to help every being to get out of their suffering. And this is called bodhicitta. After this, we get into the next part, which is where we generate the motivation. I want, by all means, to get out of the cycle of samsara and to reach enlightenment. And for this reason, I will meditate. I will develop meditative concentration. I will meditate on impermanence, on love, whatever is my object of meditation. After this, we do the preliminaries, just as when we do the self-feeling, so we purify the place, we generate the offerings, we invite the sacred beings, we do the 7 limbs prayer. And this is the part that is called asking for the blessings, requesting the blessings. And there are 2 aspects inside of this process. The Lama Tsongkhapa put particularly emphasis on this as necessary for those that want to meditate correctly. There are the admission of one's own mistakes openly, so to put oneself at peace with the past, and to request the blessings. Is it possible to meditate completely in a context, so to speak, sterile, outside of any context of faith, where there is no connection with the sacred? I do it in a way, so to speak, scientific, where I just use the technical tool for my mind to concentrate. Yes, I would say that it's possible. It's not what I've learned, it's not what I want to share, but it's totally possible, and it's not that it's harmful. If someone wants to do it, that's completely fine. But from experience that our masters and the masters of our masters and many people for centuries have had, there are also other parts of the process which help us and support us in all of that, and that are fundamental in this path. And that's where there is the difference between learning how to meditate as a tool
che si può utilizzare nella vita
that can be used in everyday life, in every context,
e imparare a meditare
and learning how to meditate as a tool of for the growth of the spiritual path. These are two different approaches, and one doesn't necessarily take away the other. I wouldn't want to be critic and to say that one shouldn't be, but there are two possible approaches. In the first one, the one that we could say that it's like a tool that one can use to feel better. It's like indeed like the doctor that prescribes 4, 7, 8, and one uses meditation to have less anxiety and so on. That's also wonderful, and I deeply rejoice. I'm happy of this. But one thing is one thing and another thing is another thing. This is fine, but the process of meditation inside of the spiritual path is another thing. As another function, as another approach, is different in this sense. And so, what we did up to now is what is done generally before the take of refuge. Even if we take, also if we take the text of the Guru Puja, it starts with, which means from a state of a mind, a pure mind, which means that first of all I clean the mind from the various thoughts of various kinds, and I bring my present to the present moment, and then I can generate the motivation. Also, when we get inside of the temple, traditionally the entrances of the temples, also if you look in front where there is the main door that we use rarely, but also here, the floor is white. This represents the fact that when you get into a sacred place, you should revisit your motivation a bit. You should get in with the mind and the heart that are clean. And that's what we do when one sits to do any spiritual practice. The first thing is to calm the mind, to clean the mind, to take oneself back at the present moment, take oneself back to a state of calmness. And then here it depends on the capacities of each one. Maybe there is like a moment where you're there, breathing, counting the breathings, and you do 108, you do one whole mala, and you go on, because it's a particular moment of anxiety or tension and so on. There are moments where one sits and just breathes in and out, and after 2 times you're already there, and then you go on with the rest.
Con questo voglio solamente
With this, I just wanted to
utilizzare gli strumenti di meditazione come
put some emphasis on this point, on the fact that to use meditation as a tool to face anxiety and all the rest is completely fine. Is a sort of narrow usage. When it's used in a context that is part of our spiritual path, in order to do it well, it demands these 2 aspects. That one does the part of purification that we also now explain a bit, and the other is the request of blessings.
Io devo trattenermi.
I need to hold myself back a little bit, because sometimes I have a hard time to not explain things well. But if I start to explain now the preliminary practices and all the rest, then we stay here until 3 or 4 days just doing that. And we have some things that I want to, where I want to get to in the next days, tomorrow and the day after. And so, to get into the preliminary practices, I've explained this on many other occasions. Fortunately, as of today, there is access to videos and so on, where one can listen back to what are called the 6 dharmas of preparation, also inside of the preliminary practices, inside of the Lamrim and of the self-feeling. This has been explained many times, so I don't want to take that back again now. Inside of this path, where one generates love towards oneself with the refuge and love towards the others with bodhicitta, and after this one does the visualization of the so-called merit field, where one imagines the sacred Guru Buddha in front of him and does the 7 limb practices, which are to pay homage, to prostrate, to make offerings, admit openly one's own mistakes and put oneself at peace with the past, to rejoice of the positive aspects, request, make request. We have in front of ourselves Guru Buddha, we request for the blessings, we request that it teaches us the Dharma, and so to have clarity on what we expect from this relationship, and to request to remain with us, have a vision of future together, and to make dedications. Inside of this, and then as a conclusion, as a final conclusion, after the 7 limbs prayer, there is a moment that is called the request of blessings. In the process of developing concentration, meditative concentration, that then is called the samadhi, it's called the state of shine, that is the calm abiding, is translated as calm abiding, that also we will explain what it is. But the goal is to train at the beginning to reach this state of concentration where one is able to stay with the mind still on a chosen object in a way that it's without effort, and staying on that object even brings a state of physical and mental well-being. So this is what allows to remain the time that one wants on a certain object. And this is called the state of shamatha, the so-called calm abiding in Tibetan shine.
Ed è un obiettivo. Prima di
And it's a goal. Before getting to this, there is the whole process of training to get there. And as a preliminary part, there is this part that is fundamental of purification and request of blessings that I wanted to explain briefly. And I believe that, and particularly the part of purification, is something that is very good for all of us. There is a concept that is often misinterpreted, where we put together the concept of purification either with the process of suffering, as if by suffering one purifies. If that was, then we will do our sessions of purification. We take our malas with nails, and we can come up with many interesting systems to purify ourselves by generating suffering, but that's not the case. To purify is not a process where one has to suffer in order to purify oneself. And the other mistake that often comes is also that in the process of purification there is also the part of openly admitting one's own mistakes, and so we get into a dynamic of feeling guilty, and that's what we want to avoid. If we take the main mantra that is used in the part of purification, which is the practice that also Lama Tsongkhapa advises, which is called the 100 syllables mantra, the Vajrasattva mantra, the most common mantra of purification.
Tokayo me bhava, supokayo me bhava, anurakto me bhava, sarva siddhi me prayajan, sarva karma sutsa me citam shriyam kuruhum, ha 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 ho bhagavan, sarva tatagata vajra mame menza vajra bhava maha samaya sattva ahom pe. Sembra difficile, non lo è.
Seems difficult, it's not. Actually, it's one of the mantras that you learn quite easily. One thinks that the mantra of purification, what is its meaning? How bad I am, I did so wrong. No. The mantra talks about welcoming and recognizing one's own essence. It talks about really welcoming ourselves. I am of the nature of Vajra. I am of the nature of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. It's really about acknowledging our potential and welcoming ourselves. So the process of purification is where we recognize our conducts that didn't go so well, the times that we did something physically where we were aggressive, violent, the times so that we did some non-virtuous actions with the body, maybe killing or stealing, or maybe using the body in an aggressive way, violent, maybe like a sexual misconduct. Remembering ourselves that the others are more easy to define, like killing, stealing, but sexual misconduct, by it we mostly mean two things. One is when you have an intercourse outside of a certain commitment, a few words, betrayal, cheating. And the other way of the sexual misconduct is when in the relationship with other person lacks the respect towards the needs and the will of the other, where the other person is nothing else but an object for my own pleasure, where there is no consideration for the needs and for the other person. It becomes just a sort of abuse. And so in this case, this is another type of sexual misconduct. And this may happen also inside of a wedding, for example, or of an established relationship where there is no cheating, but anyway, there is a lack of respect towards the needs and will of the other. Sexual misconduct generates suffering. Oneself and the other is something that anyway generates suffering. And so there are various ways where through our physical actions we can generate some negative interactions. Then there are the actions of speech, like lying, using word in an aggressive or violent way, to use our speech in a way that creates division and conflict between people. There are the negative activities of mind, like malice, desiring the suffering of the other, and so these feelings of hatred, of anger, of rancor based on jealousy, envy, and so on. The point is that have we done some stupid things up to now? Someone? I would say yes, right? Why? What is it that led us to do that? Our ignorance and our selfishness, if we have to blame someone or something. Why did I do that? Driven by selfishness, so I want to be happy, I don't want to suffer, and driven by my ignorance, where I don't see the results of that action, and I believe that in that moment, that is the best way to avoid a suffering, push away an object of suffering, and to obtain something that I like, and so on. So driven by the force of our own ignorance and of our own selfishness, we have done some stupid things. The point here is not that I need to point the finger at myself and to say how bad I've been. The point of the process of purification, first of all, comes from an act of welcoming oneself. It's a bit similar, like, comes to my mind, like a boy, like a girl that are little and do something that are wrong. And imagine that this kid comes to you and says, I've been wrong, I did wrong, I did what was not fine. And I imagine three types of possible approaches that we can have towards this. In one, we go to the boy and we say, no, but it doesn't matter, come here, I give you a candy. And I will say, poor boy, he did, like, went through a whole process and put a lot of effort to recognize that what he did was not fine, and we just say, no, it doesn't mean anything. Then there are the times that the boy comes to us and says, look, I've done that, it was not fine, I'm sorry. Yeah, you did that, and then I slap you in the face. So a punishment because you did what you shouldn't have done, and he even told me. Next time, the boy will he come back to us telling us that he did something that was not fine? No, I don't think so. We'll try to hide that. So even worse than the other version. The other possibility is that the boy comes and says, look, I'm wrong, I did wrong. Okay, come here, and we welcome him and we say, okay, what can we do together so that we can make it so that you don't do it again in the future? How beautiful that you were able to recognize that that thing was not fine. Now that has passed, but how can we make it so that we don't do it again? What have we learned from that? How can we move on? And that's what we have to do with ourselves. Because inevitably, until, as long as we are taken by selfishness, ignorance and so on, we will do stupid things. I believe that it happens to everyone to say something that it would have been better not to say, to do something that it would have been better not to do, or to not do something that it would have been better to do. Me, many times I realized that even there, where I didn't have the intention of doing harm, the way that I behaved, for my lack of awareness of the whole, generated suffering. Even today I was thinking about that. And it's not about a matter of wanting to harm or not, it's about learning through experience as we go on with life.
Perciò, quello che succede qui è,
And so what happens here is that, okay, I welcome myself and I direct myself towards what I want to become. But what happens usually is that when we do some things that are not fine, we live difficult moments and so on, very often we remain with some knots inside of ourselves. And one of the things that is really harmful is that sense of guilt. But then in Tibetan is called, using the term gyopa. Gyopa is translated as, would be more like
più il senso di colpa. Ho fatto quello che non dovevo, non ho fatto quello che
repentance, more regret. So I remain with that thing there with which I feel guilty. And Lama Tsongkhapa says that one that has a strong sense of guilt, that is not at peace with the past, and sits to meditate, is not able to sit there, to just stay there, and doesn't even know why. So, during the meditation preliminaries, to go through this process, to be able to get to get at peace with oneself and to loosen, to untie those knots that we have inside of ourselves, or the various guilt and punishment of ourselves, and to be at peace with our past is one of the things that helps us to meditate well. In a few words, what do we do? Let's imagine that in front of us there is what is called technically the object of faith. Usually one imagines the Guru or Buddha Shakyamuni, or in the aspect of Tara. In some contexts it could be as a simple source of light. Actually one could even do this practice. For example, like a Christian person, if she wants to do this practice with the image of Jesus, I think that that person can do it. According to the Christian tradition, I'm not the one that could say it, but the important thing is that I have in front of me what is called the object of faith, what represents for me love, what represents the qualities developed to the maximum potential. So I visualize in front of me, from its heart comes a flow of white nectar, like luminous, like a nectar that comes, that enters our head, enters the head, and then slowly starts to fill the whole body. And as it fills our body with this nectar, then we feel, first of all, in our heart, where are those blocks that have been created by our traumas, by our sense of guilt, those knots that were created in the past. Some knots we can see them clearly, some of them we can feel them physically, but we don't know what they're related to. But we allow, as this nectar comes and descends, we imagine that as it fills our body, it unties these knots, loosens these tensions. And there, where we are aware of actions that we did that were not fine, we openly admit our mistake. To openly admit the mistake means to see something and to say, okay, it was a mistake. Which doesn't mean to say, I am bad, look how mean I am. No, it means that driven by ignorance, taken by selfishness, I did this. It would have been better if I didn't do it. Putting oneself in a position where I'm neither the victim of the other, neither the victim of myself. I'm not here trying to find the guilty of anything. It's pointless to find the guilty. We shouldn't find who was the guilty of a certain action. We should untie the knots that action has created inside of ourselves. Only the fact of being able to observe some behaviors that we have had that are negative without getting into a place of judgment and to point a finger and to look for the guilty, that's already a huge step. So with that attitude, we recite the mantra of Vajrasattva, that can also be recited as Om Vajrasattva Humpet, or the long mantra, one learns it bit by bit, that is very beautiful. And as we do this mantra, as we recite this mantra, we imagine this flow of nectar coming, filling our body, and that bit by bit the tensions that loosen up, that are the energetic blockages, the tensions created by physical aggressiveness, by mind and speech, these negativities leave our body as a sort of sweat, but that doesn't remain there, but it dissolves into space, and bit by bit our body fills with this nectar, bringing ourselves to a state of peace, where we are at peace with ourselves, in harmony with ourselves, where we can be at peace with our past. Sometimes when we do this practice, it could happen, I warn, that when one does it quite seriously, then it could happen that sometimes the hidden wounds come up to the surface. And so, yeah, more than purification, so I do it to feel well, and I feel awful. Why does this happen? Because when we allow ourselves to look at ourselves in our eyes and to put some wounds that we have in front of us, maybe things that we have tried to hide and pretend that they're not there, to face them, it makes them come to the surface, and so it can also be painful. But the choices are either I face them in a protected context, a healthy context, to heal them, or pretend that they are not there, and then sooner or later either I explode or implode. And so that's a good thing to face them. In this context, as we do the mantra of Vajrasattva, if we recognize inside of ourselves some places where there are also some traumas, some blocks, something, it's not the moment to ask why, who's the guilty, why did this happen, what was it in my childhood, because my father and my mother, because the cousin. It's not the moment to point the finger and ask and to find the reason why. It's the moment to welcome the tension and to loosen it, to let it loose. And here it's strange to say, but there is an act of courage and non-attachment to the tension itself. Sometimes we identify ourselves with those blocks. It's like someone that is sick and has a serious sickness, and it becomes like the purpose of life to heal from the sickness. And I've already seen situations like this, like, I don't know, sort of cancer or also other types of sickness, and like the whole life stops to heal the illness, and then one puts a lot of energy into it, and then one is declared as healed at a certain point, as cured. One will say, wow, how beautiful, but then now what do I do? My life was about healing from the illness. Now what do I do? And so it takes a while to come back to life. And so to then take life not with the purpose of healing from the cure, from the sickness, then it requires some effort. And sometimes we identify ourselves with some negative states. And it's a bit like, I remember when I was a child, that when one is a child that has the pleasure of being sick to be cured. And sometimes there is a place where to be the victim is comfortable, because it allows us to put ourselves in the hands of the other. They did this to me and that. And so, to be well demands a certain autonomy.
E qua in questa pratica di
In
purificazione ci vuole
this process of purification, we need courage and non-attachment to our own blocks.
E questo richiede anche una nuova
And
identità.
this also requires a new identity. There is also a process of identity, of not identifying oneself with those blocks, those tensions. All of this is part of this practice of Vajrasattva. That is a practice by itself. It's used as a preliminary part of the meditation. And Lama Tsongkhapa even say that if one wants to practice meditation in a very serious way, before really meditating and developing one point in concentration and so on, should do the preliminaries with at least 100,000 mantras of Vajrasattva. Which means if one dedicates day and night for that, then does the whole day, just doing that, it requires around 3 months. I know many people that did that. It's possible to do it. But the point is not the number 100,000. This is a mistake that sometimes happens. I need to do 100,000, then as 100,000 is past the next level. It's not about that. It's about dedicating time to dissolve those tensions. There are those who have more, those less, some that are really deep and that don't come out easily. I know people that have the terror of doing Vajrasattva mantra. I don't want to get in touch with that thing. Better to leave it hidden. But if we don't get in touch with the knots, with the blocks that we bring inside of ourselves, that will come to the surface in one way or the other. And when we will try to be more with ourselves, then they come out.
Perciò, pratica di
And
Vajrasattva.
so the practice of Vajrasattva, very important.
Non dico che
I
dobbiamo
won't say that we need to first realize the practice of Vajrasattva to then meditate. We do it in a parallel way, but to do the practice of Vajrasattva to allow this process to purify. It really meant as cleaning. And it's interesting that what we purify is not that, look, I'm dirty because I've done that, and I need to clean myself from that. It's not that. What do I need to remove? What do I need to clean? That sense of guilt, those energetic blockages, the negative karmic force that was generated through those actions. Until cleaning also the negative conditionings that were created. Another time we can take some days dedicated to the practices of purification, which is also something very beautiful. Sometimes it's difficult because we have a hard time to look at ourselves in our eyes and to face our own deeper wounds, our own sense of guilt. And particularly, I repeat, we should be very careful to not take the path of purification as a sort of mea culpa. Look how mean I am because I did this and that. It's not about that. It's really welcoming oneself with love and to allow us to untie those knots that we have inside of ourselves. After this, the other part that is also important is what is called the request of blessings. Blessings are a process. It's an interaction that creates a favorable condition for an inner transformation. In other words, there are some places, there are some people that when we are in their presence, it's easier to concentrate. There are some places and situations where it's more difficult. There are some times where to get in touch with a certain situation, to be in a certain place, naturally brings us to generate some inner states, and for the bad, for the better or worse. Sometimes in Tibetan is used a bit in a sarcastic way to say that, for example, when we are next to a person that is very nervous, and at the end we also get nervous. Ah, look, the blessings that I received. Ah, you gave me so many blessings.
Noi cerchiamo il contrario.
And we are looking for the opposite. So to be in a presence of someone that is calm, balanced, and so on, to help us to generate those states. So we request blessings. And here there is the visualization, so rays of light from the 5 chakras of Guru Buddha come to our 5 chakras. The rays of light of the 5 colors, white, red, blue, yellow, green, each one has a connection with different qualities. Like in the practice of self-healing, we imagine that as these rays of light and nectar come, bit by bit, we develop those qualities. It's as if a wave with a certain vibration comes, and that makes it so that we naturally vibrate at the same frequency, so to speak. And so we request the blessings. Then, after having requested the blessings and having done the practice where one imagines to receive the blessings, at that point starts the actual training of meditation. At that point we train in the one-pointed meditation, or we meditate on impermanence, or whatever the object is. And at the end, one dedicates. So, what are called the preliminary practices, that both in the field of the self-healing practice and in the field of meditation meant as a tool to develop calm abiding or meditation on impermanence or whatever it is, the preliminary practices are always the same.
Io farei una cosa.
I will do one thing.
Ovviamente,
of course,
sono percorsi graduali.
These are gradual paths. It's not that you do something that you do from one day to the other. But one thing that is very positive is that these are paths that work. These are processes that one step at a time things move. I've seen people, saying that after that I've started, it seems that I got worse. Here there are two aspects about this. One is that it's a bit like when we start cleaning house and the house seems more dirty. It's that our standard of cleanness has changed. How much the house is dirty or clean, it depends on one's own standard of cleanliness. Because the more you clean, the more you also see the dirt. The less you clean, the less you see it. You know, the years that I lived in India, more people that said, it's clean? Yeah, well, where? Why is it clean? Because the standard is different. I remember once that I was cleaning a kitchen, like the stove. At a certain point, it was so dirty for such a long time, is that I had to take the hammer to clean it. And the screwdriver. Like in Tibet, you will do the cleaning of the gompa, of the meditation hall, the general cleaning, once every 7 years. And when we did this cleaning, there was a detail in the middle of that when you bring the tea, imagine there was like thousands of monks sitting on cushions, more or less like 60 centimeters from the ground, long cushions like this, and the floor was like really hard dirt, and so they were bringing tea like with these containers as big as this, and they were bringing them on the shoulders, and to serve the tea for 3,000 thousands of people inside of the temple for prayer. They had to run, so there were the guys running with these teapots with tea with butter. That basically is tea with black tea with salt and butter. There's not even salt. And
Ma in Tibet io l'ho visto fare tante volte proprio burro e basta. Mai riuscito a berlo.
I was never able to drink it.
Qualche volta non ho avuto scelta.
Sometimes I had no choice, but in general I never drank it. And they were bringing this, but they were running so much that then some tea will naturally spoil on the ground. Sometimes someone would sleep. In order for them to not sleep, someone will come back and he would throw sand around where the butter was falling, and this was getting accumulated in years. So once every 7 years, you remove the big crusts from the cushions, from the floor, and so if you asked at that time, you would say, is it clean? Yes, it's clean. Then, okay, you're at 4,000 meters of altitude, many different conditions, then you can also get used to the smell, and so someone is born in that context, and then it's different. It also comes to my mind, for example, that in Tibet, in the past, people had showers once a year, and that was normal. Once Lama Lawa, this Lama that also lived in the Kumpen in Milan for many years, and he told me that he went to Tibet and he met a man and became friend of him, and this man was 80 years old, more than that, and he said, you know, me, my life only had shower once in my life. One day my nephew told me that, no, you should shower because it's good here and there, and I said, yeah, okay. Then she brought me to the city, she took me a room in a hotel, and I take this shower, and I felt so sick, I will never ever shower again. So the point here is not to discuss about the standards, it's about the habits of how I see things. One that never looks inside of himself, then it seems that everything is clean, everything is fine. Also when maybe there is a certain feeling, negative feeling, then I drink something and take something and pretends that nothing is there. Then sometimes looks inside, better to close. When we really start to look deeper and to clean, we remove the first layer, then it comes out another layer, then you also remove that, then it comes out another layer. Then sooner or later it ends, but that's also why when one starts to do these practices, then it seems that it's worse than before. But it's not that it was worse than before, but that there is more awareness of what is there. It's not that there are more conflicts or tensions.
Dico questo come una piccola avvertenza.
I say this as a sort of warning,
both
for the part of the practice of purification, but also of the actual part of the meditation practice. And tomorrow I want to get more into that, into the details of that. What happens is that at the beginning it seems that thoughts increase. It's not that there are more thoughts, simply there is more awareness. Usually one doesn't even realize that mind is never stopping. When we start to try to keep the mind still, then we also realize that it's not still. It's not that it's less still than before, simply there is more awareness of that. And so for this, sometimes when we start to try to meditate, to learn to meditate, one says, no, this is not for me, I will never learn, my mind never stops, I try to do it, it seems worse than before. First of all, this is what happens basically with everyone at the beginning, so no need to discourage oneself. And two, it's not that the mind is more active when we meditate, simply we recognize internal movements that we usually don't see. So I would say now, okay, let's do briefly, in one moment, the practice of purification together, because we just also mentioned it. And I repeat, there are many ways to do it. We will do in a simple way. few minutes.
Ricordiamoci che questa pratica
Let's remember also that this practice can be done independently from meditation in general, can also be done autonomously.
quindi
So it's not something that necessarily needs to be done together with the breathing. Or the ideal thing is that we will now do very shortly is to start with some breathing, to then do the practice of purification. If one puts inside of the other preliminaries, even better, but now we will go directly to the practice of purification by in itself.
perciò ci sediamo in una posizione
So we sit in a comfortable position with our back straight but not tense.
le spalle
Our shoulders are relaxed.
la testa leggermente
Head slightly forward.
la bocca rilassata
Mouth is relaxed.
e gli occhi
And the eyes are slightly closed, looking downwards.
osserviamo il nostro proprio
Observe
respiro
our own breath.
portiamo il nostro
We
respiro
bring our breath to an abdominal breath.
inspiriamo
We breathe in
profondamente
deeply.
ed
Breathe
espiriamo
out deeply.
profondamente. Nello spazio
In the
davanti
space in front of us
sorge Guru Buddha,
appears Guru Buddha
nell'aspetto
in the aspect of our own Guru, or as Buddha Shakyamuni.
Guru Buddha ci
And
sorride.
Guru Buddha smiles at us.
Inspiro,
Breathe in, breathe
espiro.
out.
Osserviamo noi
We
stessi
observe ourselves
e
and
riconosciamo
we recognize
che guidati dalla nostra
that,
propria,
driven by our own ignorance,
dal nostro proprio
by
egoismo,
our selfishness, the obsession of self-gratification,
con sentimenti
with
come la,
feelings like anger, jealousy, envy,
l'arroganza,
arrogance,
attaccamento ed ansia.
attachment and anxiety.
Abbiamo compiuto
We
azioni,
did physical, verbal,
abbiamo
mental
usato la
actions.
parola, abbiamo avuto pensieri
We had thoughts
che hanno
that
generato
generated
interazione portando a sofferenza.
interaction, bringing suffering.
Riconosciamo le volte
We
che fisicamente
recognize the times that physically
abbiamo delle condotte
we had
malsane, negative,
unhealthy negative conducts,
come la
like
violenza,
violence
condotta
or a
sessuale
sexual
scorretta.
misconduct.
Riconosciamo le volte che
We
con la parola
recognize the times
abbiamo
that
usato la parola in
we
un modo
used our
aggressivo,
speech
violento.
in an aggressive, violent way, the times that we lied.
Riconosciamo le
We
volte che con
recognize
la
the
nostra
times
propria
that
mente
with
abbiamo
our own
avuto
mind we
pensieri
have had
basati sull'odio,
thoughts that were based
sulla
on
malizia,
hatred, malice,
desiderare, volere la
wishing
sofferenza dell'altro,
for the suffering of the
sentimenti
other,
come l'invidia
feelings like
o la
envy,
gelosia.
like jealousy.
Osserviamo come
We
tutte
observe
queste
how
esperienze
all
hanno
these
creato dei
experiences
nodi e dei
created
blocchi
some
nel
knots
cuore.
and then blocks inside of ourselves.
Le volte che non abbiamo
Times
saputo
that we were
reagire
not
bene alle situazioni
that we're not
che
able to
c'erano
react
intorno a
well
noi,
to the
creando delle
situations that
tensioni,
were
dei
around
blocchi
us,
dentro di noi.
creating some tensions, blocks inside of us.
Riconosciamo questi
We
blocchi,
recognize these
queste
blocks, these
tensioni
tensions
che si trovano nel
that
nostro
are
corpo.
inside of our body and in our minds.
Chiediamo le benedizioni a Guru
We request the
Buddha
blessings
per
of Guru
avere la
Buddha to have
chiarezza
the
e la
clarity and the
forza
strength
di non
to not
ripetere più
repeat
queste
these
azioni.
actions ever again.
Andiamo ad accogliere noi
We
stessi
welcome ourselves with love, compassion,
e direzionarci verso
we
uno stato
direct ourselves towards a state
più equilibrato,
that is more balanced,
dove possiamo essere
where
liberi
we
da
can be free
tensioni
from
e
these
non ripetere
tensions and
più
not
quelle condotte.
to repeat that conduct.
Un flusso di
A
nettare
flow of nectar,
bianco viene
white
dal
in
cuore
color,
di
comes
Guru
from the
Buddha
heart of
nel
Guru
nostro
Buddha
capo.
to our head.
Man mano che
And as
entra
it
e
comes
riempie
in and fills our body,
passando per ogni parte
going
del
through
corpo,
every part of our body,
sciogliendo i nodi,
untying the
i
knots
blocchi
and the
energetici,
energetic
la
blockages,
forza karmica
the
negativa
negative karmic
creata,
force that
i
was created,
condizionamenti
and the
negativi
negative
creati.
conditionings.
Questi blocchi
These energetic
energetici
blockages dissolve,
la forza karmica negativa
the
si
negative
sciolgono.
karmic force also dissolves,
E man mano che si
and
sciolgono,
as
si
it
dissolvono,
as they
uscendo dal
dissolve,
nostro
they also
corpo
go
come
out
una sorta
of
di
our body as a
fumo
sort of
che esce, come se
black
fosse
smoke
uno
that
sudore,
goes out as if it was
che
like a
si
sort of
dissolve
sweat
nello spazio
that
intorno.
dissolves in the space
Il
around
nostro
us.
corpo piano
Our
piano si
body,
riempie
bit by
di
bit,
nectar,
is filled
in uno
by
stato
this
interiore
nectar,
di
in an
pace
inner
e di
state of
armonia
peace and
con noi
harmony
stessi
with
e con gli
ourselves
altri.
and with the others.
Man mano che riceviamo questo
As we
nettare
receive
possiamo
this nectar,
focalizzare
we
in
can
certi nodi o blocchi
focus
feriti
ourselves on some
o in un
specific
modo
knots or blockages or in a general way.
cerchiamo di non entrare in un
We
senso
try
di
to not
colpa,
get into a sense of guilt.
non siamo qui per
We're
dare
not
la
here
colpa a uno
to put the blame on one or the other,
semplicemente di
but simply
accogliere
to welcome
quei blocchi,
those
quelle
blocks, those
tensioni, quei
tensions,
condizionamenti,
those
paure
conditionings,
che
like
sono
fear
rimasti
and so on, that remain there,
e sciogliere quei
and to
blocchi,
loosen those blocks,
accogliere noi stessi,
to
per
welcome
essere in
ourselves, to
pace
be
con il
at
nostro
peace
proprio
with our
passato.
own past.
Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Trishta Dridro Me Bhava Soto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsam Sarva Karma Sutsame Citam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tatta Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahom Pe Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manopalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Didro Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsam Sarva Karma Sutsame Citam Shriyam Ho ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tattagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahom Pe Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manopalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Didro Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsam Sarva Karma Citam Shriyam Kurohum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tattagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahom Pe Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Didro Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsam Sarva Karma Sutsam Citam Shriyam Kuro Hom Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Ma Samaya Sattva Ahom Pe Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Didro Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakta Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Sutsame Siddham Shriyam Kuru Ho Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahom Pe Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Didro Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayat Sarva Karma Sutsa Me Citam Shriyam Kuro Hom Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahom Pe Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Didro Me Bhava Sutto kayo me bawa, supo kayo me bawa, anurakto me bawa, sarva siddhi me Sutsa me citam shriyam kuru ho, ha 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 ho bhagav, sarva tata gata vajra mame, vajra bhava maha samaya sattva ahom pe. Nostro corpo rimane
Our body is filled with nectar in an inner state of peace, of harmony.
Inspiro
Breathe in
ed espiro.
and breathe out.
Guru Buddha, visualizzato
Buddha,
davanti,
visualized in front of us,
viene verso di noi,
comes to us,
diventa piccolo come un
comes as small as a thumb,
entra dal nostro
enters our head
e si siede gioiosamente
and sits joyfully at our heart chakra,
portando le benedizioni,
bringing the blessings
corpo, parole, mente.
to our body, speech and mind,
Diventiamo inseparabili e della
and we
sua
become inseparable and of its same nature.
sperimentiamo la
We
mente di Guru
experience
Buddha,
the mind of Guru Buddha.
sperimentiamo uno
We
stato
experience
interno di
an
infinito
state of
spazio
infinite
interiore,
inner space
con amore incondizionato,
with unconditional love
una profonda gioia.
and a deep joy.
Questa pratica
This practice
idealmente viene fatta con una
Ideally,
certa costanza
should be done with a certain constancy,
e volendo è possibile
and
farla anche
if we want, it's also possible to do it for long periods.
di
I
sessioni
mean,
di un
like
paio d'ore,
sessions of a couple of hours where
recita il mantra e
we
visualizza.
recite the mantra and visualize.
Avessi dei punti
If someone has like some particular points when feels particular blockages, that's not really about the body, or maybe yes, but where there is a rancor of something or a sense of guilt of another thing, then can do it for longer, loosening bit by bit that
Idealmente,
tension.
quando uno
Ideally,
va a
when
sedersi per
one sits to meditate,
ha già fatto questo
has already
prima e
done
si
this
trova in uno
before
stato
and finds
di
himself
armonia con
in a state of harmony with himself.
perché più noi ci
Because the
troviamo in uno
more
stato
we
di
are in a
armonia
state
con
of
noi
harmony
stessi,
with
più la
ourselves,
nostra mente è
the more
rilassata
our
con
mind
noi
is
stessi.
relaxed with ourselves.
Più ci
The
troviamo in uno
more
stato
we are in a state where
ci sono tensioni,
there are
un
some
senso di
tensions,
colpa,
sense of
rabbia,
guilt, anger,
invidia,
envy,
qualunque cosa del genere,
and all
più
these
diventa
kind of
difficile
things, the more it
essere lì con
becomes
noi stessi.
difficult also to be there
E
with
una delle
ourselves.
caratteristiche
And
della
one of the
meditazione
characteristics
è
of
che uno si
meditation
trova
is that
con se stesso.
we should stay with ourselves.
Io direi prendiamo certi punti della
So I
meditazione
would say let's
per
take
cercare di
some
capire un
points of
pochettino
meditation to
meglio
try to understand a little
che
bit
cosa
better
si intende per
what
la
do we
meditazione.
mean by meditation.
Ok? Quando abbiamo detto ieri che esiste la
Yesterday,
meditazione
when we said that there is
e
the
la
analytical
meditazione
meditation
unidirezionale,
and the
oltre che la meditazione di
one-pointer
ripassare
meditation,
i vari
or there
passaggi.
also then the meditation to
Però
go
fra la
through the
meditazione
various
analitica e quella
passages of the path.
unidirezionale,
But the analytical meditation, the
quella
one-pointed
analitica è quella,
meditation,
tra virgolette,
the
più
analytical
facile,
one is the easiest one,
quella
so
che si
so
fa.
to speak.
Certe volte si fa la meditazione analitica anche a voce
Sometimes
alta,
we also
parlando.
do the analytical
Per
meditation
esempio,
with a like
quando io
talking.
studiavo
For example, when I was studying in India, the process of studying that is done through dialectics or debate is a form of analytical meditation. And I had very beautiful experiences where comes to my mind once in Tibet, the Lama Ganchen asked me to do a debate in a context that was not the most relaxed context, in the sense that I was in a monastery that I didn't know, in front of people that I didn't know. For Tibetans to see the Western that does the debate was already something like you're going to the circus to look at something strange. It was already that was not even used to the debate itself, so to see a Westerner doing that was something out of place. But something very beautiful happened also on other occasions, but that time particularly I remember that I did two debates, one on bodhicitta and the other on correct view of reality, and I started to do the debate. In the debate you take a subject, you ask a question, and according to the answer you try bit by bit to build a sort of discourse to prove a thesis. What happens is that you maintain a line, a thread of thought that is very linear. When you ask the question, you also slap the hand. The right hand represents the sword, cutting the ignorance, the sword of Manjushri. And the left hand represents that you have the sentient beings, so you cut the ignorance and you remove the suffering from the beings. This is the meaning of the gesture. But when you do the debate, remember that when I did it sometimes, and saw it here at the center, they said, Lama, usually you're so calm, you're so aggressive, because when you ask the question, it's something that you put a lot of intensity there. It's not something very soft, like, what do you think about it? And, no, usually it's quite... and you talk with also strength. There is a whole way of debating, and I really enjoy it a lot in general. And that time I remember that I started doing this, and it comes a point where you lose the perception of the people around. You don't feel anymore the hand clapping in the other. You don't feel... The only thing that is there is the object about which you are reasoning. There is nothing else. And at a certain point, in that case, Lama Ganchen said, okay, enough. He said, and it was almost as a sort of shock. Okay, I go out of that state. This is described as a state of concentration in a process of analytical meditation. So, even in a process of analytical meditation, it's very possible to develop a state of concentration, where one doesn't think about anything else but that. There are no other thoughts. And this, in the monasteries that come from the Nalanda tradition of the ancient India, and now they are still there in Tibet and in India, the debate tradition of dialectics, for how it could seem strange, is a form of meditation. When we talk about meditation, we don't imagine like someone that is standing and claps the hands and stamps the foot with the force. We don't imagine that as a meditation. We imagine meditation like sitting, but that's a form of analytical meditation.
Quando sono venuto a vivere in Italia, una delle cose che mi ha...
When I came to live in Italy, one of the things that I was missing was that, for example. But anyway, the other form of meditation is the one-pointed meditation. In general, in meditation, what we want to do is to keep our mind still on an object. What object? Whatever object. Then I prepared one thing that I wanted to distribute to everyone. Now there is Lama Michel, okay.
Poi se puoi dopo portare queste che le distribuiamo a tutti. Perché quando andiamo a meditare, la domanda...
Because when we meditate, the fundamental question is, meditate on what? Let's remember that if someone tells you, I go to meditate, on what? No, I meditate. You can't simply meditate.
Se mediti,
you meditate on something. If you get used to something. You familiarize yourself with something. So, when we talk about meditating, there always needs to be an object of meditation.
sempre c'è un
There's
oggetto di
always
meditazione. Quando
an
noi
object
parliamo di meditare,
when we talk about meditating.
che cosa può essere un oggetto
What
di
could be an
meditazione?
object of meditation? Anything.
Però, quando
But
noi uno sta
when
imparando a
one
meditare, è
is learning
importante
how to
scegliere
meditate,
un
it's important
oggetto
to
di
choose one
meditazione
object
e
and to
rimanere su
remain
quello.
on that.
Ed è molto
And
meglio se sia un oggetto
it's much better
mentale,
if
non un oggetto
it's a
visivo,
mental
sensoriale.
object, not
Ok?
a
Perché io
sensorial,
posso
visual
meditare, vedo
object,
l'orologio
because I
davanti a
can
me, mi fisso
meditate and I
sull'orologio,
see the
non
clock in front of
pensare
me, I
solo
fix
vedere
myself on the
l'orologio.
clock
Posso.
and think about
È
anything
molto
else.
meglio
Yeah, I can do
avere un
that, but
oggetto
it's much
mentale,
better to have a mental
ok?
object,
Un'immagine,
a mental
qualcosa.
image, something.
E una delle cose che la
One of the
tradizione
things
tramanda
that it's
è il
transmitted
fatto
in
di
the tradition
visualizzare il
is the fact of
corpo del Buddha,
visualizing the body of Buddha,
cominciando da visualizzare
starting
il volto del Buddha.
by visualizing the face
Quello che
of
adesso vi
Buddha.
sto distribuendo, ho
Now,
chiesto
what I'm
l'altro giorno a
distributing,
Simone e
what
ad
we are
Alessia di
distributing, I
preparare
asked the other
questo.
day to Simone and
Io ho
Alessia to prepare
tradotto
this.
questo testo,
I
che è
translated
più
this
il
text.
testo che c'è nella prima pagina
The text that
è una
is
cosa
in the first
simpatica, non è
page is
quello
more
che
like
non vi
a
serve
nice
poi alla fine,
thing.
però
It's
è simpatico, quindi l'ho lasciato. Il testo nella prima
this,
pagina è
the
il
sec-
testo
i-
originale
is the
che
original
spiega
text that
come disegnare il
explains
volto del
how to
Buddha,
draw
ok?
the face of
Però
Buddha.
se lo leggete capirete
But
poco
if
più
you
di me,
read
nel
it,
senso che
you will
per
understand a
noi
little
non
bit
siamo
more
più
than
abituati a quel
nothing,
tipo di
because we're
istruzione
not used to this kind
che
of
dice
instructions.
nel riquadro del
Like
volto di
in
tale
the
misura. Qua
square.
sor è l'unità di misura. Ok, che vuol dire
So it talks about the unit of measure of the sore,
quindi
and you have like the
4
square,
e
so
4
four
sor, e 4
sores, and
sore e
then
mezzo,
four
dividendo
and
così le
four and a
linee del
half,
volto.
dividing so the lines of the
Non è che
face.
abbiamo
And
capito molto, no? Poi se uno prende il
then if
disegno
one
vedi
takes
che c'è
drawing,
4,
then we
4,
see that there are
4,
four,
poi
four,
2,
four, then
e poi
2,
c'è
and then
1,
there
poi
is
c'è
1, then
1,
there is
1,
1,
2,
1,
4,
2,
4,
1,
i vari
4,
numeri. Però
the various numbers, but
noi non ci dobbiamo
anyway,
preoccupare di
we don't
quello
need to
adesso.
worry about
Io ho
that.
lasciato quello perché è una
I
cosa
gave you that
simpatica,
because it's
che
a
è il
nice
testo
thing and it's
originale
an
in
original
tibetano
text
che
in Tibetan
spiega
that
come
explains
fare
how
per disegnare il volto del
to
Buddha.
draw the face of
Quello
Buddha.
che succede è questo:
What
quando
happens
noi
is the following: when we
disegniamo
draw
qualcosa,
something,
quella immagine è
that
molto più
image
facile da
is much
ricordare.
easier to remember afterwards.
Quindi uno degli
So, one of
strumenti
the
per
tools
aiutarci a
to help
meditare
us to meditate,
visualizzando il volto del Buddha
visualizing the face
è
of Buddha,
disegnare il
is to
volto
draw
del
the
Buddha.
face of Buddha.
Ok? In generale si
In
comincia
general,
disegnando il
if
volto del Buddha e
we
poi si
start by
disegna tutto
drawing
il
the face of
corpo
Buddha, then we draw the
e si
whole body,
utilizza quello
and we
come
use that
oggetto di
as an object of
meditazione.
meditation.
Quindi quando uno va a meditare
So,
su che cosa può meditare?
when one
Teoricamente
meditates,
su qualunque cosa.
can meditate
Però
on
quando comincia
anything,
ad
but when
imparare a meditare nel
we
processo
start
di sviluppare
meditating
la tecnica
in the
di
process of developing the
concentrazione,
technique of
è
concentration,
importante
it's
scegliere
important to
un
choose
oggetto
one
di
object
meditazione e
of
rimanere
meditation and to remain
su
on that
quell'oggetto di
object of
meditazione. Non
meditation.
tipo oggi medito
For example, it's
nell'impermanenza,
not like,
domani
today I
medito
meditate
nel
on
volto del
impermanence,
Buddha, dopodomani
tomorrow I
ai piedi
meditate
del
on the
Buddha,
face of
dopo dopo
Buddha,
la mano.
and the day after
No,
on the hand.
scegliamo una
No, we
cosa
choose one thing
e ci
and
concentriamo
we
su
focus
quello.
on that.
Per esempio,
For
mi viene in
example,
mente,
comes to my
esistono delle
mind, there are
istruzioni,
some
per esempio all'interno
instructions,
di una
like,
pratica chiamata
for
la
example,
pratica
inside
del
of a practice,
Vajrayogini.
the practice of
Uno può
Vajrayogini,
per
one,
esempio
for example, can
sviluppare la concentrazione
develop one
meditativa usando come
meditative
oggetto di
concentration using
meditazione
as an object of
l'immagine del
meditation
terzo occhio.
the image of the third eye.
Ci sono infinite possibilità.
There are infinite possibilities.
Io vi ho portato questo perché
I brought you
secondo
this
me
because according
è
to
una
me
cosa
is
importante
an important
che di
thing
solito non
that
viene fatta
usually is not done,
ed fa parte è una cosa
and
che la tradizione
is
tramanda
something that is
di
also
solito la
transmitted from
tecnica
the
per disegnare il
tradition.
Buddha
Usually the technique
non
of drawing
avviene
the
perché
Buddha
uno
doesn't
vuole
happen
fare un
because
disegno,
one wants to do a
avviene per
drawing,
migliorare la propria
but to
capacità di
improve
disegnare nella
one's own
mente,
capacity to
di
draw
immaginare,
in the
di
mind, to
fissare
imagine,
quell'immagine
to
dentro.
fixate
Ok?
that image inside of
Ne
oneself.
parlavo qualche
And I
giorno
was
fa,
talking a
era
few days
con
before,
Alaor, mi sa, sì,
I
che
think with
diceva
Alaur,
che
and
una
it
delle
said
cose che
that
l'ha aiutato
one of the things
tanto
that
una
helped him
volta
a lot is
aveva
that
trovato dei puzzle delle divinità
once he found some
e stare
puzzles
lì
of
a fare
deities
quei
and
mille
to
pezzi
do
di puzzle per
those
tanto tempo, eccetera,
thousands
quelle
pieces of
immagini
puzzles
che lui
for
ha
a long
fatto
time, that
oggi ce
image
le
that he
ha
did,
molto
now he has it
facilmente riesce a
very
generare
clearly in his mind.
un'immagine.
He can generate that
Per
image
quello
very
mi è venuto
clearly.
in mente, possiamo
And so
fare
for
qualche
that
puzzle per
reason
questa
it came to my
sera.
mind, okay, let's
Però
do,
quello che di
do
solito
something
si
like
fa,
that.
si
But
disegna il volto del Buddha.
so usually what is done is to draw the
Prima ho
face of
pensato lo
Buddha.
facciamo tutti
Before I thought,
insieme,
okay,
poi
we
siamo
do it all
tanti, non ci
together. Then
sono
I thought,
tanti
okay, there are
interpreti, le
too
immagini
many
difficili.
people, we don't have
Quindi io
tables and
lascio
pencils for everyone,
questo
so I leave you this.
e vi invito
And
dopo
I
nella
invite invite you after, during the break or later. Everyone goes there, and then if you want, you can also give you another one. And the page behind, there is the code, the QR code, to download the grid to do other images. So it's not like, this drawing didn't come out very good, so but after that you can do many more. So the point is, by drawing, this helps us to imagine.
Perciò
And so traditionally, this image is used. The image of the face of Buddha is the first aspect, then we visualize the whole body. When we visualize, we start right away trying to generate the whole image. At the beginning it's normal that image is not very vivid, very sharp. Maybe at the beginning you see something around, and then bit by bit you start to have more clarity on the various pieces. It's better this than starting before visualizing the ear or the nose. You have the whole picture, and then bit by bit one allows there to be more details and clarity about the image. When we meditate, what we want to develop are two things mostly. Is the clarity and the presence. We want to be present on the object of meditation, that is, our mind is not going around, and we want the object of meditation to be clear. So the meditative state is not a state where mind is a bit like foggy. There was a movie that I don't advise you to watch for various reasons, called Samsara. There is also another beautiful movie from Herzog, from Samsara, that is beautiful, with just images, no words. This is a movie called Samsara that starts with this image of a monk that ends a long time of retreat in a cave, and they come to call him and to say, you have finished your retreat. And then when he gets out of his cave, it seemed that he spent his years smoking weed from from morning to dusk. It's like kind of stoned, and this is the opposite of what it should happen. And the first reason for which I tell you, don't watch this movie, because it passes a wrong idea. I see that there is my father that is there. I remember that when I was a kid, I was living in Brazil, and for a while I went to India to do a retreat, and I did quite a long retreat. I think it was like 6 months. And he did a retreat, so his father. So when he came back, we did a vacation in the mountain, and I was with my cousins playing video games, and at a certain point he comes, and like he wants to play together with the son and everything. He was never like one that liked video games, and I remember that he was like the better player among all, and I joked and told him, what did you do in India? Did you sit down with video games, or did you meditate? But the reality is that when one meditates a lot, mind remains clear. Whatever you do, then you do it well, you do it quickly. Don't have that thing that you're a bit foggy. So the meditative state is a state of mental clarity. It's not a state a bit like that, because this state of inner fogginess, unfortunately, is pleasant. And there are those that think that if one sits to meditate, maybe stays there for hours, for months, for years, and what one is familiarizing with is with the foggy mind. This is not what we want. This foggy mind is called mental torpor, and the object of meditation is present, but it's not clear. I see something there, the image of Buddha is there, but it's not there, it's a bit foggy, and unfortunately is a pleasant sensation. This state that is also not really like kind of half asleep, and then when it's really transforms like into a gross state, then it's like a really sort of muddy sleepiness. That is not a mental torpor, that is the next phase. which is called mukpa in Tibetan. There is really this strong fogginess. The mental torpor is more like when I am there, but there is no clarity. It's there and not, mind is not clear. There is a sort of slight fogginess. We don't want that. The other extreme is that there is no fog, but the mind is jumping from one thing to the other. And so this is translated as mental agitation, and we want to avoid both mental agitation and torpor. These are the two main enemies of meditation. So we want to place our mind on one object and to keep the mind on that object, our mind with that object with clarity and presence.
Okay. What
happens is that when at the beginning is a process that is like about going there and getting back, because when I manage to have more clarity of the object, then I go more towards the mental agitation. When I manage to have more presence with the object, then it brings me more towards the torpor. So when I'm able to be with the object, the tendency is to go towards the extreme of the torpor. When we try to get out of the torpor, and we try to have clarity, the tendency is that then mind is too much awake and we lose what we are doing and we go somewhere else. So it's a process at the beginning where we constantly take ourselves back on the track. There are these two characteristics that are present in meditation. So we have, in Tibetan, said Necha, Silcha, and Silchinar, three aspects. That are stability, Nebecha. Cha means part, Ne means to stay, so the part where the mind is staying in the object. So my mind is not going around, stays on the face of Buddha that I imagine in front of me. This is one aspect. Together with it, there is also Selcha, which is clarity. My mind is awake, is clear, it's not foggy. Narcha, which is the third aspect, is the intensity. It's described in these terms. It's as if I take a cup in my hands. One thing is the fact that I'm able to hold the cup, and I don't have to hold it neither with too much strength or not enough strength, like it should be in the right way. The other thing is the attention that the cup doesn't spill the tea, so in what position I have the cup. So what happens is, okay, on one hand, I should hold the object, as if really holding it. And on the other hand, I also need to hold it straight. There needs to be clarity, attention on what I'm doing. So I have my object of meditation that could be like the face of Buddha. Initially, I must be able to take my presence to it, because at the beginning, what extreme are we? Agitation or torpor? Depends on everyone, but in general, agitation. So if I have a lot of agitation, where should I put more energy into? Like in stability or clarity? Stability. Stability is the mind stable on the object. So, okay, I need to take the mind back there and kind of chain the mind to the object. Okay, stay there. The mistake that often is done is that in stopping the mind on the object, one tries to create this stability with a certain force and aggressiveness. As a sort of force of opposition. You shouldn't go around, stay there. And there is an attitude, a bit of an inner tension that is created. It doesn't work. We should help our mind to rest on the object of meditation. So I take the mind back there. my mind rests on the object, stays there. When I'm able to create that stability. Let's look at the notes that I put here.
Sì, la mente resta ferma.
The mind stays on the object without moving. Then, when I'm able to do this, I must make sure that the object appears with vividness, clarity. Because the tendency that could be is that when the mind stays still on the object, then at a certain point, it's as if I relaxed and finally the mind is not going around, and it starts to be a state of relaxation, and then bit by bit it becomes foggy until I fall asleep. I believe that many have already had experience of trying to meditate and to say, maybe,
uno si mette lì, diciamo, a meditare.
let's say that one sits there to meditate or tries to meditate, and then at a certain point gets into this state of a sort of that is half asleep, and that's a very pleasant state actually. When we are half asleep, also one can have particular intuitions, strange sensations, and all of that. It's not that this state of being half asleep is something bad, but you're not meditating. You're familiarizing with that state. And it's described by great masters that there are some meditators that maybe spend years doing retreats of meditation, and they familiarize themselves with these states of being half asleep. Because one sits, the discursive mind stops. How beautiful. I don't have thoughts about the past, I don't have thoughts about the future. It's pleasant. I'm there. I don't think. It's as if I didn't think about anything. The problem is that one spends a year like this, then as those years end, one familiarized just with that state. It's not that he familiarized with compassion or love or stability or other things. And he definitely hasn't developed meditative concentration. He developed an inner state of relaxation that is foggy. And so Lama Tsongkhapa and then many masters after him talked about this many times and said, be careful to not do this. And still today there is something that's there. There is a verse, a passage from Lama Tsongkhapa that says that the extreme relaxation is not meditation. Why? Because at the time of Lama Tsongkhapa there was this vision that was very widespread, that we also find it today, where meditation is a state of deep relaxation. This state of deep relaxation is not a bad thing, but it's also not the method to develop the qualities and face the mental defilements. So it's not what we mean by meditation. I believe this is quite clear. And so, one first generates the object. First effort is to take the mind towards the object, and then one uses the breathing at the beginning. Then, and the beginning of the practice is really like a job where one spends more time to take the mind back to the object rather than the time that one stays on the object. This is really the first step. If we look at that drawing where there is the path, at the beginning of the path there is the monk that is the practitioner, represents the meditator, practitioner, that goes out of the house. The house should have 4 doors and 1 door and 4 windows that represent the 5 senses. So first one protects the senses, but then gets out of that and starts the path. And so in front of him there is the monkey and the elephant and the practitioner running after them. This represents the fact that we are trying to meditate and we run after our mind. Our mind is not following us, we are following our mind. We are there and then our mind is not staying where we want it to stay. And this is the first step. But it's not like this because now it's like this. It has been like that for centuries. And so at the beginning, when we are there, it's much more the time that we spend taking the mind back to the object rather than the time that the mind stays on the object. Then bit by bit what happens is that it becomes more the time that it stays on the object rather the time that the mind goes away, until being able to maintain it still on the object. At the beginning, all of this requires a lot of effort, and then at a certain point, the fact of being able to maintain the mind still on the object not only is effortless, but also generates a state of physical and mental well-being that is described as when one develops the flexibility of body and mind, or the
si può tradurre come duttilità o come flessibilità,
flexibility.
ma è la capacità di
That is
tenere
the capacity of maintaining the mind where we want, and that the mind is still on the object, with clarity and presence. It even generates an inner state of pleasure, a sort of pleasure that is generated with keeping the mind there. And the body that remains still without moving into the meditative states also generates some physical pleasure. It's not like something that is painful here and there. When we get into that state, it's pleasant, both on the mental and physical level. When we develop this kind of pleasure that comes as a result of remaining with mind still on the object for the desired time, and to stay still with the body there. These two states are called the flexibility of body and mind, and one generates this pleasure of the body and mind as a result of remaining with the mind still with clarity on the object, with no agitation, with no distraction, with no torpor, with clarity and intensity. This moment is where one has developed calm abiding, the so-called shamatha. This state of meditative concentration. Once that one has developed this, at that point one can change the object of concentration. So instead of meditating on the face of Buddha, can meditate on compassion, impermanence, or anything else. But the process usually is that first I develop concentration, then I choose the meditative object. First I learn how to drive, then I choose where to go. And so
io volevo più che altro darvi
I wanted more than anything to give you an overview.
una visione, un overview, aiutatemi. Una visione panoramica, eccoci, una visione panoramica del processo meditativo.
Of the meditative process from where we find ourselves to where we want to go. If we take that drawing again, okay, at the beginning there is the monk, he's quite like desperate with the arms in front running. Then as we go up, then the elephant becomes more white, which represents the mind that doesn't have any more torpor. The monkey bit by bit comes down until she's not there anymore. Then the monk goes in front and starts to lead the elephant. Then at a certain point appears a rabbit that represents the subtle mental torpor, which is not the subject of now. And then at a certain point you see that on top there is the monk that rides the elephant on a rainbow. And then after that he has like a sword in his hands. When he is on the rainbow, flying with the elephant, represents when he has developed shamatha, this calm abiding, this state of meditative concentration that is one-pointed, that generates a state of physical and mental well-being. When that goes together with the analytical meditation, it's called vipassana, the profound view, and is represented in the painting when he has the sword, that is the analytical part on the correct view of reality. If we want, also maybe tomorrow we can also review the whole image drawing with the various details and meaning of it, which is very beautiful and helps us. But if we look at that passage, it starts with the practitioner running after the mind, and there are also some fire in between that represents the effort that one needs to put, and ends with the state of meditation where one is able to fly. What happens along that path is that bit by bit one is able to be less distracted by the objects of the senses, to have more presence. At the beginning, one chooses an object of meditation and constantly needs to take it back. And if you look at the monk, in his hands has two tools, has a hook and as a sort of rope, a stick with a hook and a stick with a rope, which represent vigilance and awareness. Tomorrow we will also talk about that. But these are the two antidotes to mental torpor and agitation.
Il processo è quello,
The
all'inizio
process is that at the beginning, mind stay on the object of the face of Buddha. Ah, dinner, come back. Then the face of Buddha. Okay, we're there. Ah, yesterday that happened. Okay, come back, the face of Buddha. Then at a certain point, you don't even realize you made like 1,000 steps and go to who knows where, then come back, okay, to the face of Buddha. Breathe in, breathe out, and somewhere else again, come back again, face of Buddha. The beginning is like this, and you can really see that in the painting. And then bit by bit you're able to keep that for longer, you're able to be more present, until bit by bit one is able to keep it for longer times, where one is present on the object and there is clarity. Then comes the point where one spends more time on the object rather than not being on the object, with the mind going around, until the mind is able to just stay present. When one is able to remain on the object, still demands effort, and remains on that until one creates such a level of familiarity with that state, and it starts to become pleasurable to remain with the mind on the object. And when that state generates a pleasant physical and mental state, one, when it's free from torpor and agitation, combined with that, then develops shamatha, the calm abiding. Tomorrow we will get more into details. Now I just wanted to give an overview.
Ovviamente prima di
Of
cominciare,
course, before starting, we need the preliminaries.
però con questo abbiamo una
But with this, we have a general view.
questo disegno
And
che
so,
ho dato,
this drawing that I gave you,
poi magari
then maybe we can also ask, I don't know if that would be possible or not, but let's see. There are some people that are able to make this drawing as well. Maybe if someone wants to ask some help. There is also Duccio who can do it perfectly, or to Alessia and Simone. There are some that here are used to make this kind of drawings, that can give a hand to someone else, but it's not so difficult. You just take the drawing, you follow the lines,
dove abbiamo anche le varie istruzioni.
and you also have the various instructions. But the important thing is to start to draw the face of Buddha to create familiarity with the image.
Per questo se riuscite oggi
And so if today you're able to make the drawing a bit, then tomorrow when we try to visualize it, it becomes much easier. And I will also do it.
facciamo adesso le dediche.
Now let's make the dedications, then we do a short break and then come back with a meditation.
Namkara chinle chokchur gepadang losan tembe drume sasumgi drove munsela takto ne gyurchi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshi ninsen takto delekpe koncho sumki chingi lobo koncho sumki ngodrubu tsol koncho sumki trashisho. All'alba,
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
facciamo una breve
Now
pausa.
let's take a very short break and then we come back at 6:30 for the meditation.